everybody. A D.C. woman pleading guilty after spitting on former interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin's shoulder earlier this year on live TV.
Yeah, now that woman could be facing some jail time for assaulting federal officers. We're going to show it to you. We want to warn you there is some strong language in this video. Take a look.
You are Ed Martin!
How you doing? Whoa.
You are a disgusting man.
Wow. So for legal details on some of the issues that young woman might be facing, let's turn it over to the Hills Courts expert, Zach Schonfeld. Spitting on a federal officer, a felony, according to Pam Bondi.
Yeah, that's right. And yesterday we actually saw this defendant who you just saw in that video, Corey, plead guilty to these three charges, these three felony charges of assaulting a federal officer that had been brought against her. This has come after the video that you just saw that was back on May 8th. It was outside Ed Martin's office, which is located in the Judiciary Square neighborhood. That's where the U.S. Attorney's office is. He's now over at DOJ being the pardon attorney, but at the time, as you mentioned, he was in that interim U.S. Attorney role in D.C., the role now held by Janine Piro. So this case was specifically not only an assault case here, but specifically an assault on a federal officer.
So what happens, right? We have this woman, we have the guy who threw the Subway sandwich at an officer. They're both charged with felonies. How do you see that moving through court? I mean, well, are their attorneys confident they can knock this down or what?
Well, I think it shows that the Justice Department, at least on the federal level, is we've heard lots of criticisms in the last few days from federal prosecutors taking aim at what D.C. local judges and D.C. local prosecutors have been doing. But I think it shows that at least on the federal level that this office under Janine Piro is willing to be pretty aggressive in bringing these cases. The fact that we actually had this guilty plea in the spitting case was because this case was actually about to go to trial. So the Justice Department wasting no time in trying to bring this trial if there wasn't a plea here. So I think it really just goes to show how aggressive the Justice Department is being right now.
Being spit on, awful. Let's just say that. But it's not being punched. It's not being hit with some sort of object. Why does it constitute assault? Is this some new guidance from the federal government that we're seeing, or has spitting on a federal officer always been a felony?
Yeah, this is not necessarily anything new in terms of guidance, but the way the charge here is specifically is assaulting, impeding, or resisting a federal officer. So it doesn't matter if you're throwing a sandwich, if you are spitting on someone, or doing something else that constitutes assault or some sort of physical conduct. All of that is in this same charge here. It can face up to 8 years in prison.
Wow.
Now, of course, because she pleaded guilty earlier this week, you'd think that she's not going to get 8 years, something less than that. But still a pretty serious charge here, and also the same charge being brought against the alleged sandwich thrower. So he, too, could potentially be facing up to 8 years.
So let's talk about that, because the Attorney General says he's a part of the deep state. I think we've got her saying it, too.
I think, I think this might be a quote.
Here's her quote. Okay. I just learned that this defendant worked at the Department of Justice. No longer. Not only is he fired, he's been charged with a felony. This is an example of the deep state we've been up against for 7 months as we refocus DOJ.
So do we have any sort of inclination about whether the government may try to make examples of the woman who spit on Ed Martin or the guy who allegedly threw the sandwich? I mean, she pleaded guilty, maybe not going to get 8 years. 4, 2, probation, community service, what?
Well, I think, Corey, you're certainly right that they are trying to make an example out of these people, and that's why you're seeing the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, being so aggressively, not only in these court cases, but also there out in the court of public opinion. You've seen her saying this week, saying that, if anyone touches a police officer, that the Justice Department is going to go after them. Now, of course, this issue is really just taking on increased significance now that we've got the National Guard in D.C. and all of that, because even this sandwich incident, it happened last weekend right before the National Guard deployment. So, of course, we've only seen more law enforcement come into the city since then.
It'll be interesting to see if they're as aggressive with protesters, for example, if people begin to protest some of these actions, Zach.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we know that the Trump administration has been really critical of what happened back in 2020 here in D.C. after the killing of George Floyd and the protests we saw on the streets of D.C. in the weeks following that, believing that some of those demonstrators needed to be held accountable and brought into court. So obviously, so far, we haven't seen the same sort of situation break out on the streets of violence or anything like that, but certainly it's something you can expect to see something perhaps very differently if that were to occur than it did in 2020.
Real quick before you go, any idea when we could get a sentence for the young woman and when Mr. Dunn might ultimately be in court?
Well, so the spitting case, we do have a sentencing date. It was set at this plea hearing yesterday. It is going to be set for October 10th,
okay.
So a few weeks away. And then in terms of the other case, that is much more in the early stages. That was just brought, so still very unclear in terms of what the timeline for that looks like.
We will be looking forward to your coverage of all of it.